would have thought that the subtle cadence of my existence could be shattered by something so trivial, so commonplace, a mere favor. That's where it all began. My husband mentioned it nonchalantly during breakfast as he savored his usual black coffee, the same familiar brew. He sipped each morning devoid of any thrill. His words lingered like a faint echo, drowned out by the seductive clink of his spoon against the cup. He claimed it would set him on the right path, said he had a talent for handiwork, could mend the fence, perhaps even handle the garage door. I acquiesced naturally. There was no compelling reason to refuse. The young man he spoke of had woven himself into the fabric of our lives for years, his adoptive grandson, though never truly a child in my eyes, at least not anymore. He had transformed. The last time I encountered him, he lingered in that tantalizing space between youth and maturity. But now as he crossed the threshold, with that effortless, nonchalant grin, he moved with the confidence of one fully aware of his own essence. The shift caught my attention before I could fully comprehend it. His shoulders were wider, his jawline more defined, an undeniable allure in the way he carried himself that had been absent before. The handshake held a confident grip, the gaze unwavering, yet gentle, warm, and inviting. And yet there was an undercurrent, a smoothness that seemed almost too intentional. My husband offered him a brief glimpse of the backyard, pointing out the broken latch on the gate, the scattered tools in the garage, discussing the details in that straightforward manner men often adopt, practical and unyielding, focused solely on the task at hand. I lingered by the kitchen window, observing them, my fingers mindlessly gliding along the edge of my coffee cup, sensing an inexplicable tension coiling itself deep within my chest. It wasn't yearning, not just yet. It was an awakening. That evening, as I glided through the well-worn motions of preparing dinner, I discovered myself selecting a dress I hadn't slipped into for ages, delicate and inviting. Delicate fabric, slender straps, the sort that embraces just enough to evoke the essence of your own form. I convinced myself it was merely the warmth that stirred my senses. Summer was pushing against the windows, the air dense, suffocating. Yet I was aware of the truth lurking beneath the surface. The three of us dined together on the terrace, secrets hanging in the air. My husband's words danced around the mundane weaving tales of work and the distant journey that awaited him. To embark on yet another conference, another series of meetings, his words weaving through the familiar tapestry of duties and timelines. I listened, nodded at the right moments, yet my gaze wandered repeatedly to the man seated opposite me. He lounged with an air of nonchalance, one arm slung effortlessly over the chair's back, a whisper of stubble gracing his jaw, as if the morning's routine had slipped his mind. His gaze met mine for a fleeting moment, yet it stretched into an eternity. As the last bite lingered on my plate, my husband slipped away, cloaked in the shadows of his own intentions, leaving a silence thick with unspoken secrets. I lingered outside, collecting the plates, feigning ignorance to the soft footsteps that crept closer as the younger man drew near. He extended his hand toward the pile of dishes. I held a subtle tension hanging in the air. "Allow me to assist." Our fingers brushed a fleeting moment in the delicate dance of connection. A gentle touch, nothing deliberate, unseen by the world, hidden in plain sight. Yet the feeling lingered, a heated caress upon my flesh. Long after the plates were gone, later that night, lying in bed beside my husband, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing, I found myself wide awake. My body writhed beneath the sheets, my thoughts a cacophony of discontent. I rose my bare feet, gliding silently through the shadowy corridor, drawn to the kitchen, whispering to myself that a glass of water was all I sought. But it wasn't desire that held me in the night. I lingered at the threshold of the guest room, caught in a moment, thick with unspoken secrets. It was barely open, from the depths of desire. The soft murmur of a melody lingers in the air, wandered away. a sultry, careless melody barely whispered as he glided through the shadows within. The floorboards groaned softly under his weight, a secretive sound that lingered in the air. The soft murmur of fabric brushing against skin. The soft cascade of water begins to flow, raindrops cascading against the cool surface. I lingered paralyzed, absorbing the secrets that danced in the air. That seemingly mundane secret affair. Indulging in the embrace of water, letting go as the night unfolds. Felt an unexpected closeness, intrusive, as if I were peering into a secret I was never meant to uncover. Yet I remained still. Not just yet. As I reluctantly returned to the sheets, my body throbbed with an unspoken intensity that lingered in the air. I glided beneath the covers next to my husband, felt the intoxicating pressure of his arm draped casually over my waist as he shifted in his slumber. His touch was a seductive caress laced with secrets and unspoken promises. Consistent, unaware, the familiar rhythm of it all. Yet my thoughts lingered just beyond that guest room door. I convinced myself it was just a fleeting thought. I convinced myself it was just a fleeting moment. I convinced myself it was all in my head. Yet an undeniable change had begun to unfold. The next morning emerged with an air of familiarity, each moment steeped in unspoken secrets. The air was thick with unspoken desires, as sunlight filtered through the half-open blinds, creating seductive patterns on the kitchen floor. I glided through the actions lost in a haze of unspoken desires. The kettle hums a gentle caress of metal against the crisp surface of bread. The soft murmur of the refrigerator lingered as I extended my hand for the milk. My husband slipped away, as he often does, leaving only a fleeting kiss on my cheek. Before the front door softly sealed his departure, monotony, secure, anticipated, I whispered to myself to cease, to silence the echoes of what had awakened within me the previous night. I convinced myself that I had outgrown such foolishness, too cunning to allow my thoughts to wander unchecked. Yet my body deceived me in subtle, insidious ways. The selection of my attire once more that dawn, the delicate care I took with my appearance as I fastened my hair swept back a hint of allure on my lips. Certainly not for the faint of heart, simply for the thrill of sensation. Something. I discovered him outside, immersed in his task on the fence sleeves, pushed up muscles, flexing as he drove the weathered nails back into their rightful spots. He was entirely consumed, lost in the moment, oblivious, or maybe intentionally feigning ignorance of my existence. As I lingered on the porch, my gaze fixated on him. The sweat tracing the curve of his brow shimmered in the morning light, sparkling like delicate shards of glass upon his skin. His body glided with a seductive grace, each movement deliberate, languid, as if savoring the very air around him. I descended into the garden, cradling the laundry basket, with an elegance honed through countless moments. If he caught a glimpse, the way my dress danced around my legs, the delicate strap teasingly slipping from my shoulder. He offered no sign yet, as I extended my hand to attach the first piece of fabric to the line. I sensed his stare, deliberate, lingering. It enveloped me, unwavering and bold, like fingers brushing softly against my spine. I held my gaze on the clothespins, my heart racing beneath the surface, reluctant to turn just yet. As I turned my gaze to him, his face held a secret lips, barely parted, teetering on the brink of unspoken words. The morning wrapped around us warmer than I anticipated. He finally murmured, his voice a seductive whisper, rich and deep. I offered a subtle nod, feigning concentration on my duties. It is indeed. It might have concluded at that moment. It ought to have concluded at that point. Yet he chose not to return to the grind. He approached me, each step, deliberate and languid, across the manicured grass, pausing just within reach, allowing me to sense the subtle warmth radiating from him. In the charged silence that enveloped us, "You seem transformed today," he murmured. I remained silent. My voice betrayed me, shrouded in uncertainty. Instead, I reached for another pin, meticulously securing the next piece of fabric onto the line, my hands unwavering even as my heart thudded wildly beneath my ribs. There was a pause, a tantalizing breath that lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken secrets. Apologies lingered in the air, his voice a gentle murmur tinged with uncertainty. If I had ventured too far, I could have halted it in that moment. I could have accepted the invitation, smiled sweetly, and convinced him that nothing had transpired, absolutely nothing. Yet here I was, ensnared in the depths of his stare, lingering far beyond what was intended. "You didn't," I replied. The words slipped from my lips, unfiltered and reckless before I could grasp their weight. He moved in the distance between us, shrinking until I could discern the delicate shadow of stubble tracing his jawline, the way his gaze sharpened, as he examined every contour of my face. His hand lingered trembling with uncertainty. As fingers glided softly over the delicate curve of my arm, tracing the bare skin of my shoulder, I remained still captivated by the moment. We lingered in that moment, the atmosphere heavy with the secrets that danced just beyond our lips. And then, as if the air itself was charged with unspoken secrets, he leaned in, bridging the gap between us, with a deliberate, unwavering grace. The kiss unfolded in a way that defied all my expectations. It wasn't a cry for help. It was smooth, almost tender. It was tender, exploring the delicate touch of mouths, meeting inviting, not demanding. His hand rose to my jaw, his thumb brushing against my cheek as he angled my face closer to his. My body stilled for a heartbeat, my mind echoing caution, yet my lips betrayed me. Anyway, encountering his gaze in a slow quivering response, the basket slipped from my grasp. The gentle thud of it meeting the ground, scarcely penetrating the rush of blood surging in my ears. The warmth of his hand glided over my neck, his fingers teasing the boundary where my dress embraced my body. I hesitated, my breath, hitching eyes filled with unspoken secrets. This cannot be. I struggled, the words heavy, awkward. He simply did not. Debate. He retreated slightly, creating distance, his hands lifted in a gesture of yielding, yet his gaze remained locked onto mine, steadfast. "I understand," he murmured, "but that won't keep us from desiring it." I averted my gaze, hiding the warmth creeping into my cheeks as I bent to collect the disarrayed laundry, my fingers trembling uncontrollably. The remainder of the day faded into monotony, tending to the plants, polishing the surfaces, responding to my husband's inquiry about our evening meal. I maintained my composure, my grin unwavering, yet with each moment I shut my eyes, the phantom of his lips lingered on my own. It clung to me, an unrelenting presence. The flavor of that morning's kiss clung to me like a hidden truth, inescapable and persistent, regardless of how fiercely I tried to bury it under the weight of tasks, phone calls, courteous exchanges, and the mundane responsibilities that ought to occupy my thoughts. Yet they chose not to. They only grazed the depths of desire. Every part of me trembled with unease, my body acutely conscious, my mind trapped in a relentless dance around the same tantalizing secret. He wore a mask of indifference, skillfully concealing the truth beneath a facade of normalcy. As we navigated the house, our paths intertwining in the hallway, a fleeting touch near the sink, his demeanor remained steady, inscrutable, infuriatingly serene. Yet in those stolen moments, I sensed his gaze upon me, a lingering glance that held a breath too long before he averted his eyes. There was no remorse in it, no embarrassment, only that same hushed, unwavering demand. It stirred a wild abandon within me, or perhaps unveiled a raw truth. The following evening, my husband revealed his plans to depart at dawn. Another unexpected journey for business. Perhaps 3 days, or maybe 4. His voice dripped with regret, yet his gaze remained fixated on the screen, fingers dancing over the keys with each mouthful. At dinner, I wore a smile, nodded knowingly, and uttered all the perfect phrases. Rest assured it holds significance. I'll take care of things here. And I meant it, or at least a fragment of my soul did, but there was another side lurking in the shadows, another piece ignited. That night I lingered in front of the bathroom mirror, my fingers exploring the delicate curve of my collarbone, captivated by the way my skin blushed under my own caress. I selected my nightgown with an excess of desire. Delicate touch, gentle embrace, a sensation that lingered like a forbidden allure, hidden from the eyes of the world. The figure in the mirror gazed at me with an air of mystery, as if we were worlds apart. A woman I had long forgotten. I lay awake, consumed by restless thoughts. My body lay motionless beneath the sheets. Breaths slow and deliberate, attuned to the sound of my husband turning, shifting, and ultimately surrendering to the tranquil cadence of deep slumber beside me. As the tension became unbearable, I slipped from the bed, my bare feet gliding silently over the hardwood floor. I ventured down the hallway, stepping out onto the terrace, where the cool night air caressed my heated skin. He lingered in the shadows, relaxed against the railing arms, crossed his silhouette, softly illuminated by the moon's delicate glow. I pondered whether he had been lingering in anticipation, or if the same restless yearning had drawn him from his slumber as it had me. As the gentle click of the door echoed in the stillness, he shifted his gaze, his eyes locating me effortlessly in the shadows, a silence enveloping us both. I lingered in that doorway, clutching the frame as if it could anchor me amidst the heavy tension of the instant. His eyes wandered, following the contours of my figure, the delicate material of my nightgown barely hiding the form it cloaked. I ought to have been consumed by shame, to retreat within those walls, secure the entrance hide beneath the sheets, and plead for the dawn to arrive. Instead, I drew nearer. The space that once separated us vanished in an instant, our forms pulled together by an unseen force neither of us could deny. His hand grazed my wrist, a tantalizing touch that sent shivers down my spine. As delicate as a secret, I remained close. My hand rose as if possessed, gliding along the contour of his jaw, sensing the coarseness of his stubble under my touch, the warmth of his skin vibrating just beneath the surface. I ought not to linger in this place, I murmured softly. His response dripped with a sultry calm, each word a tantalizing secret. Yet you truly are. The intensity of his gaze, not that of a boy pursuing a dream, but rather a man fully aware of his desires, stirred something profound within me, causing a delicious tension to rise. His hand glided to the small of my back, drawing me in with a tantalizing slowness, allowing me a moment to resist. I did not. My body melted against his, as if it were destined to be there. There, my head tilting back, lips parting, as his barely brushed against mine. As the kiss unfolded, it lingered with a gentle touch, each moment drawn out with intention. A question posed not through speech, but in the lingering touch of lips, meeting the gentle caress of his hand, tracing the silhouette of my waist. He kissed me as if he craved to etch the moment into his very soul. Every moment lingered, embraced, and I surrendered to him. I pressed my lips against his, with a shared, unspoken desire, my fingers gripping the fabric of his shirt, drawing him nearer. The night enveloped us in a heavy embrace, the air simmering with desire, and the intoxicating fragrance of jasmine wafting up from the garden below. Somewhere within the confines of the house, the clock ticked on, oblivious to the tempest brewing between us. When I finally pulled away breathless, my hand lingered against his chest. He remained still, leaving me to linger in the space between us. He released me, yet his gaze remained locked onto mine. "I'm not sorry," he murmured, a hint of mischief in his voice. I remained silent. I turned away, retreating through the door, shutting it behind me, with hands that quivered as if they had lost their rightful place. The following dawn, all resumed its familiar form. The kitchen came alive once more, with the seductive flow of water, the tantalizing clatter of dishes, and the soft, alluring murmur of the radio. My husband's suitcase lingered by the front door, a silent promise of his impending escape. He brushed his lips against my cheek as he departed the act, intimate, rehearsed, and comforting. Yet my body still held on to the echoes of that night. Every nerve tingled beneath my skin, every part of me ignited by the memory of his lips on mine. And in that moment I realized this was far from over. The dawn broke, revealing just the start of what was to come. The world donned its familiar guise of normalcy so convincingly that for a fleeting moment I nearly succumbed to the illusion. The sky stretched endlessly, a canvas of clarity, the sun radiating warmth yet tender, while the breeze danced through the open windows, whispering secrets that beckoned me to surrender once more. The facade of ease, the coffee curling in its vessel, the toast kissed by the flame, the everyday ceremonies unfolding like a meticulously crafted performance. I lingered at the kitchen table, my fingers dancing in languid circles around the rim of my mug, lost in a haze of unspoken desires. The chair opposite me sat vacant, the atmosphere in the room heavy with the echoes of last night's secrets. My body bore it like a secret etched deep within, waiting to be uncovered. That kiss, that intimacy, the gentle intentional touch of his lips on mine, the longing it ignited within me. I whispered to myself once more that this had to end, that I could rein myself in, that I hadn't ventured beyond a point of no return. Yet my body turned against me with each thought of him. The echo of his hand on my waist, the unwavering confidence in his voice as he declared his lack of remorse. I ought to have felt fury. I ought to have been repulsed by my own actions. Yet all that lingered was the relentless beat of desire, echoing softly and profoundly, as if my very being had awakened to the essence of sensation. As the gentle creak of the back door reached my ears, and the subtle sound of footsteps glided across the kitchen floor, I chose to keep my gaze down for a moment longer. His presence was palpable, a secret lingering in the air before a single word escaped his lips. His presence enveloped the air, a silent symphony that spoke volumes without uttering a word. I'm venturing out to gather some essentials. His voice sliced through the stillness, smooth and effortless. Do you desire anything from the town? I averted my gaze, entranced by the seductive dance of the coffee's swirling patterns. No, I'm perfectly all right. It was a deception so delicate that the very air trembled with the weight of unspoken truths. Yet he chose not to confront it. He slipped away as silently as he arrived, the door whispering shut behind him. Gently lingering in the shadows, the burden of his absence loomed large, almost as palpable as his presence, while I devoted the hours that followed to rediscovering my essence, folding laundry with an obsessive grace, polishing the already gleaming countertops, and shifting the books on the shelf just to keep my restless fingers occupied. Yet the electric pulse of anticipation lingered, refusing to soften the jagged lines of unease coursing through me. Each movement seemed like a hollow echo of reality, a charade I had lost faith in. As the sun dipped low, the oppressive hush that enveloped the house became unbearable. I convinced myself that stepping away even briefly was essential to untangle my thoughts and find a fresh perspective. I snatched my keys, slipped on a light jacket, even though the day was warm, and set off on my drive. The heart of the town gazes fixed ahead, while secrets dance in the shadows of the mind. The streets held a sense of intimacy, their secrets woven into every corner. The familiar little grocery store that had been my haunt for years. The familiar dimly lit cafe on the corner, where lovers lingered over steaming cups, their unspoken secrets hanging in the air. I drifted through the aisles aimlessly, my fingertips brushing the shelves as if selecting a box of cereal could tether me to the world once more. And then he appeared before me. I rounded the bend by the fruits and vegetables, and there he stood, At the distant edge of the aisle, he leaned casually against the shopping cart, his gaze lingering on the label, a hint of intrigue dancing in his eyes. A vessel. He glanced up, our eyes locked, and for an instant time stood still between us. It felt like fate had woven its threads too tightly, each twist and turn too intentional. My stomach coiled my breath, suspended in a tantalizing dance between my chest and throat. He presented a sly grin, casual, unfazed. Refused. Anticipation hung in the air as I swallowed hard, striving to mirror his nonchalant demeanor. Likewise. The distance that separated us was tantalizingly narrow, even with the expanse of the aisle stretching before us. We both stood there hushed, each of us feigning ignorance to the charged tension crackling in the unspoken phrases that lingered in the air. "Seeking assistance with your burdens?" he inquired after a moment, his hand sweeping toward the vacant basket at my side. The subtlest spark of mischief danced in his gaze. "I'm fine," I replied, my voice devoid of the warmth I had hoped to convey. Yet I remained. Instead, we glided down the next aisle together side by side, exchanging trivial words that danced in the air. The atmosphere, the cost of vibrant greens, the ridiculousness of the parking chaos beyond. Our fingers grazed in a fleeting moment, a spark igniting as we both reached for the same box of tea. Neither of us uttered a word of regret. The drive home was a hushed affair, the car enveloped in the soft thrum of the engine and the palpable strain of closeness. His gaze lingered on me intermittently, while I focused on the view outside, attempting to mask the frantic rhythm of my heart pounding against my ribs. As we arrived at the house, he silenced the engine, yet lingered, hesitating to unlock the door. Instead, he shifted his gaze toward me, reclining just a touch in his chair. "I never intended to cross paths with you," he murmured, his voice laced with an unspoken tension. "Yet I find solace in my choice." As I gazed at him, truly gazed, a revelation unfolded before me for the very first time. The same tumultuous struggle flickering behind his gaze that ignited a fire within me, the yearning, the suppression, the hushed, agonizing recognition of our actions. "This is perilous," I murmured. The words lingered softly. His gaze locked onto mine, unyielding. "I understand." The moment lingered between us, heavy and charged. And then, with a languid grace, he extended his hand, his fingers gliding over the delicate skin of my wrist, feather light, as if gauging my willingness to retreat. I did not. He drew nearer, his gaze, probing into my own lingering, offering me the decision. And once more I let him carry on. His lips brushed against mine softly, at first cautious savoring, like the initial taste of a secret desire. Yet the pause was fleeting. The kiss lingered, a deliberate dance of desire. His fingers caressed the nape of my neck, drawing me closer as my body surrendered to the weight of his presence. As we finally separated, gasping for air, I leaned my forehead against his. With my eyes shut tight, my heart raced fiercely, a delicious ache coursing through me. "We really ought to refrain," I insisted. "Yet we shall," he murmured, and we both understood he held the truth. There was no escaping the inevitable after that. Excuses have no place here any longer. The barriers of pretense have crumbled away. An undeniable spark had ignited between us, and neither of us put forth any genuine attempt to halt it. Perhaps it's the recognition that lingers in the shadows. Their unveiled truths only serve to stoke the flames of yearning deeper, peeling back the final veils of doubt that had bound us in deception. My husband departed at dawn, a suitcase clutched tightly in his grasp. The well-known sound of the front door shutting behind him, akin to the delicate snap of a secret being unleashed. The absence he created lingered thick and suffocating, the sort of silence that magnifies secrets. Each subtle sound, the relentless ticking of the clock on the wall echoing secrets untold, the gentle sigh of the floorboards beneath my steps, the soft, secretive notes of birds echoing from beyond the window. Common noises excruciatingly piercing. I lingered at the kitchen counter, my fingers entwined around, an untouched coffee cup lingering in silence. My gaze lingered off the delicate tendril of steam rising, as if I could immerse myself in its embrace, momentarily shedding the heavy burden that clung to my heart. Yet I found myself unable to do so. My body stirred with a fervor it had long forgotten, unsettled, delicate, yearning deep within as the soft rap echoed through the shadows at the rear entrance. I moved without a second thought. I felt it all without a glance. His presence enveloped me long before his form came into view. He entered unbidden, a shadow of intent trailing behind him. Gently shutting the door, he embraced the secrets that lingered in the air. His gaze locked onto mine, unraveling the turmoil I had failed to conceal. I sensed the warmth surging under my skin as he drew near, the distance that once lingered between us vanishing with each deliberate stride. Silence enveloped us, heavy and charged. His hand rose, fingertips brushing against my cheek, weaving through my hair as his gaze lingered on me intently. His touch held no aggression, only an undeniable assurance. His thumb glided softly along my jaw, a tender touch that held an air of both yearning and ownership intertwining the two in a delicate dance. The kiss arrived in a rush, lacking the deliberate, hesitant crescendo of those that had come before. His lips sought mine with an insatiable desire that mirrored my own. His hands glided down to my waist, drawing me closer, as if we had been entangled in this dance for ages, resisting the inevitable. And perhaps we did. Perhaps not in the obvious way, but in each fleeting glance, we averted feigning ignorance of the undeniable tension that lingered between us. I can't recall how it happened, but my hands found their way into his hair, fingers gripping tighter as I leaned closer, in the embrace, savoring the blend of desire and hesitation that rendered it unthinkable to pull away. My heart raced with a fervor that seemed to echo in the silence, as if he could sense the wild rhythm beneath my skin. He pushed me softly against the kitchen counter, one hand firm at the curve of my back, the other lingering on my hip, keeping me anchored as if I might vanish if he released his grip. I surrendered completely. My body pressed against his yearning, quivering longing. For the heat of his presence, the pressure of his touch, the draw of his lips upon my own. It was tender, it was deliberate. Each caress was intentional, every motion languid enough to ignite a longing swift enough to blaze across my skin. As his lips departed from mine and glided along the curve of my throat, a gasp escaped me, my head arching back reflexively, fingers entwined in his hair. His breath caressed my skin, his mouth tender, yet demanding, as he trailed kisses along the gentle arch of my neck. "I can't resist," he breathed against my skin, his voice husky, intimate. I remained silent. I was unable to. My thoughts fell silent, while my body began to articulate a forbidden dialect I had silenced for far too long. This wasn't the first time my husband had abandoned me in this house. It wasn't the first time I had sensed the heavy silence creeping into the voids he left behind. Yet this was the inaugural moment I allowed another to delve into that void and seize it for themselves. The world beyond stayed the same, cloaked in secrets and unspoken desires. The garden danced softly in the breeze, the distant murmur of traffic, a subtle secret beyond the hedges, the sky expansive and unblemished above it all. Unmoved on the surface, yet deep within a tempest brewed, vibrant, thrilling when he finally withdrew his breath, heavy and erratic, his hands lingering at my waist. His gaze remained fixed on me, a silent promise hanging in the air. Silence enveloped us, heavy and charged, stretching into an eternity. The atmosphere crackled thick with the unspoken decision that lingered in the shadows. "You realize this won't suffice," he finally declared, his tone unwavering. I nodded slowly, my fingers gliding over the edge of the countertop, seeking something tangible to anchor me amidst the swirling uncertainty. He was undeniably correct. A kiss, a fleeting encounter in the shadows of the kitchen. It could never satisfy the craving. The yearning had burrowed in too profoundly. As he turned to depart, I lingered on the seductive arc of his silhouette, the way his shoulders squared, as if preparing to confront the weight of our recent actions. Yet he chose to turn away. I lingered in the silence, long after he slipped away, my skin alive, with the memory of his caress, my lips still tender from the imprint of his kiss. Regret should have consumed me, yet instead an insatiable craving took hold. The following morning, I awoke with the essence of him still clinging to me, suspended in the space between my lips, and the echoes of recollection, like a hidden ache that lingers with each inhale. The sunlight dripped across the bedroom floor in delicate strokes, weaving familiar shadows against the wall. Yet the atmosphere of the room seemed transformed, as if it now concealed a mystery I couldn't tuck away neatly among creased linens and scattered belongings. The facade had crumbled, leaving no room for deception, neither for me nor for the shadows that lingered. The boundary had been breached, not through a careless misstep, but with deliberate awareness and intent. And what terrified me most wasn't the remorse I was meant to experience, but the desire that intensified within me. Every moment I revisited his touch on my body, the heat of his breath lingering by my neck, the coarse edge of his stubble grazing my jaw as his lips sought deeper connection. I glided through the house that morning, my fingers grazing the furniture as if it were foreign, the kitchen counter where my body had bent under his hold, the chair he occupied the night before, serene as a still lake, as if we hadn't laid bare our souls in the gentle glow of dawn. Every corner of the house pulsed with unspoken secrets, even in the absence of visible traces. It felt like the very walls were steeped in the fervor, now exuding that intensity back at me. I occupied my hands tending to shifting items that required no attention, polishing surfaces that gleamed without effort. Every movement felt robotic, a feeble effort to drown out the simmering tension coiling tightly within me. Yet no diversion could quell its relentless pulse. Every caress of my own hands against my skin, the gentle folding of fabric, the soft sweep of hair from my face stirred the memories of where his fingers had lingered. By midday, the house was enveloped in an unsettling calm, the quiet so intense it seemed to throb against my ears. The hours stretched endlessly, as I wandered restlessly, each step echoing the memories of him in the shadows of these walls. I convinced myself that I craved freedom, a fleeting escape, even if just for a moment. The choice seemed pure, as I took my keys, draping a sweater carelessly over my shoulders, sliding into the familiar flats, waiting by the door. But the moment I crossed the threshold, my heart raced with the tantalizing thrill of a fateful encounter, that perilous dance of destiny that had long since shed its guise of coincidence. I wandered without direction. At first, the gentle purr of the engine enveloping the stillness. The streets of the town faded into a haze of enticing familiarity. Yet my thoughts drifted to the heaviness of his stare, the assurance in his touch, the rhythm of his inhalation. Heavy with desire as he drew closer, I sensed the thrum of it deep within an insatiable hunger I couldn't articulate or fulfill alone without making a definitive choice. I drove into the dimly lit parking lot of the quaint convenience store nestled on the outskirts of town, the spot where I was aware he occasionally lingered, where the paths intertwined just frequently enough that an encounter there could still be deemed serendipitous, I revealed. There I was lost in the mundane picking up milk and bread, a trivial task that masked the deeper currents swirling beneath the surface. Yet my gaze swept across the lot before I even silenced the engine, hunting for the silhouette of his vehicle. It was absent, and I ought to have experienced a sense of liberation. Yet what lingered was a profound weight of disillusionment. Within the confines, I meandered through the slender passages, each step a dance of distraction, my hands reaching for treasures, while my mind drifted elsewhere. I ventured into the next aisle, and there he stood, a presence that stirred something deep within. Not at the counter, not outside, but poised in front of the cooler. One hand pressed against the cold metal door, the other nonchalantly resting in his back pocket. His head turned at the sound of my footsteps, eyes capturing mine with the effortless anticipation of someone who had been longing or yearning. For a fleeting moment, we were frozen, caught in a web of unspoken tension. I reached for the carton of milk closest to me, my fingers unnaturally calm, despite the wild rhythm of my heart. His gaze trailed the movement, languid and intentional. "Are you trailing behind me now?" His voice caressed the air, playful and inviting. I offered a brief shake of my head, the edges of my lips curving upward, before I could rein them in. Not by design. The distance that separated us was thick with tension, even as the chill from the open fridge caressed the air around us. My canvas. I angled my body just enough, feigning interest in the drink labels before me. Yet the intensity of his gaze lingered, resting against the curve of my back like a heavy hand. "You're not wearing your ring," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. I paused for a fleeting moment, my gaze drifting to my hand untouched and unadorned, just as it had been that morning when I had carelessly removed it, setting it softly into the dish beside the sink, where it often rested at night. I remained silent. The silence between us deepened, laden with unspoken truths that lingered in the air, refusing to fade away, irresistible. He moved in a blend of ease and intent, narrowing the space until the subtle hint of his cologne mingled with the crisp aroma of soap, intoxicating and electric. My body coiled, my breath stilled in my throat. Shall I cease this dance? His question lingered, delicate yet unwavering. I might have uttered a word, ought to have, yet my mouth opened and silence lingered. Instead, I sensed the lingering touch of his hand, gliding softly over the small of my back, fingers dancing upward until they met the curve of my shoulder. His thumb glided deliberately, following the curve of my sweater, his gaze fixed on me, anticipating any hint of resistance. There was nothing hidden beneath the surface. As I finally released my breath, it trembled, faltering, my body leaning ever so slightly into his caress, like a moth irresistibly drawn to the flickering flame. We held back from kissing, not in the light of day, where prying eyes could catch us. Yet the air crackled, with an unspoken promise, drawing us closer in a wordless pact that lingered just beyond our lips. The journey back seemed to stretch on forever. Each stoplight, each twist in the road, a haunting echo of decisions unchosen, or maybe the ones I had embraced long before I dared to confront the truth. I wandered through the dimly lit spaces, a restless spirit caught in a web of unspoken desires, unable to find solace. My body ached for the warmth of his touch, the strength of his hold, the pressure of his lips on mine. But beyond that, I longed for the intensity of his gaze upon me. As if I lingered in the shadows of routine and concession, the message arrived at last, brief and unambiguous. "Are you by yourself?" I typed back, without a moment's pause, the sole word that resonated with authenticity. Indeed, anticipation coursed through me long before his hand met the door. The knock at the door was a delicate caress, a whisper of anticipation, as if the burden of what lingered beyond could be softened by its tender approach. Yet it was not. My hands quivered against the polished surface as I grasped the handle, fingers gripping it fiercely, urging myself to maintain a steady breath. I recognized the presence immediately. The instant my phone buzzed, I sensed it deep within me. Against the kitchen counter, the solitary phrase shimmered in the dim light, a beckoning I was far too entangled in to deny. As I swung the door wide, he lingered in the threshold, one hand casually hidden in the pocket of his jeans, the other poised against the frame, leaning in just enough, his gaze unwavering. His lips remained a silent secret. He was under no obligation. The distance that separated us crackled with an electric tension, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken desires, vibrating just beneath the surface. I silently moved aside, allowing him to pass by. The edge of temptation. His gaze lingered on me, tracing the delicate strands of my hair with a tantalizing slowness. The delicate straps of the top I had selected with both recklessness and intent. My body reacted before my thoughts could even grasp the moment. The subtle clenching deep within the heat unfurling across my skin, as if it were recalling a long-lost touch. With a soft click, I shut the door, leaving only the lingering touch of his hands in the air. Silence enveloped us, heavy and charged. The second lingered, drawn out and excruciating, until he approached me, bridging the gap with deliberate, calculated strides. His hand-extended fingertips gliding along the delicate contour of my collarbone, ascending to the gentle arch of my neck. I tilted my head back slightly, a reflexive gesture, as his touch sparked a fire within me that I could no longer suppress with logic. "I shouldn't be here," he murmured finally, his voice barely above a whisper, yet his hand lingered on me. "I understand," I replied, stepping closer, erasing the distance that had been merely a mirage, my body colliding with his as if pulled by an irresistible force. His mouth claimed mine with an urgency that was both known and yearning, lips pressing, hard fingers weaving through my hair as he intensified the kiss. This time there was an absence of doubt, no measured steps, just an insatiable craving. The kiss transformed, now daring and intense, laden with the unspoken truths of our shared moments. The lingering gazes that stretched beyond time, every stolen breath echoing in the silence between us, where we feigned purity. His hands glided down my back, drawing me nearer, clutching me as if terrified I would disappear the moment he released his grip. I found myself drawn to him, my form yielding to his giving into the irresistible allure I had resisted in vain, the heat of his breath enveloping me. Against my cheek, the firm contour of his chest pressed close, the languid intentional glide of his hand tracing my waist. Every thread pulled at my core, unraveling me slowly, deliberately. As he pulled away from the kiss, his forehead lingered against mine, our breaths a soft intertwined rhythm. "This sensation was intoxicating," he murmured, and I loathed how readily I concurred. We lingered in that moment, caught in the stillness of the house, our breaths uneven, the gentle tick of the clock in the hallway, marking the time we could no longer ignore. "I can't help but crave you," he murmured, his voice trembling ever so slightly at the brink. My hand rose, fingertips brushing against the contours of his face, following the line of his jaw. My lips parted, yet the words lingered, burdened by unspoken truths. What could I utter that wouldn't echo as a mere justification? What reasoning could possibly illuminate this insatiable craving that had burrowed itself so profoundly within me? In reality, I craved to continue just as much. I had spent countless years feigning that desire, had a limit that commitment signified the conclusion of yearning. A specific yearning, a subtle fire simmering just beneath the surface. But here it was vibrant and intense, reminding me with every caress that I was still capable of yearning. Not the courteous, calculated warmth I had learned to tolerate, but primal, fervent, inescapable. We drifted into the living room, instinctively intertwined our hands, refusing to part our bodies, irresistibly drawn by the unspoken tension that lingered in the air. The couch surrendered as I melted into it, drawing him closer, his presence enveloping me, his lips exploring the tender curve beneath my ear. His fingers glided along the curve of my shoulder, easing the strap of my top down with a deliberate slowness, as if revealing something fragile yet thrilling. My flesh trembled under his caress. My body curved towards him, yearning for more. Yet just as the intensity between us teetered on the edge of something inevitable, he halted. retreating slightly to lock his gaze with mine. "Command me to leave," he murmured. I gazed at him, my breath quickening beneath the delicate material, my lips tender and full from the intensity of his embrace. My heart pounded fiercely within my chest, the battle of desire and remorse ripping me apart. Yet the words remained unspoken. Once more my hand rose, fingers entwining with the fabric of his shirt, drawing him closer, my lips seeking his, with an assurance that eluded my words. The night enveloped us, the house standing as a quiet observer to the unspoken decisions we repeated in the shadows, cloaked in secrecy. There was no scheme, no promises exchanged, only the intoxicating urgency of now the way his skin ignited a fire within me. The flavor of his essence lingered on my lips. The warmth of his touch roaming over the skin I had nearly lost touch with, igniting a spark of vitality within me. And when he finally departed, long after the moon had ascended above the rooftops, the heaviness of his absence enveloped the room with a piercing intensity, echoing the impact of his presence. I lingered in the shadows of the night, the fabric entwined around me, my skin alive with an electric pulse. With the memory of his touch, the guilt I thought would consume me never arrived, only the intoxicating ache of understanding that I would surrender once more, for the reality was undeniably clear. I craved for it to linger. I wish I could claim that after that night, clarity found me, that the burden of my actions weighed heavily upon me, that the embarrassment coiled around my throat so fiercely, I was left with no option but to admit my truth, flee or resist. The yearning yet, that's not the truth of the matter. What transpired was perhaps even more sinister. What transpired was an insatiable craving. Yearning dances to a rhythm of its own, unfolding in its own time, governed by its own enigmatic laws. Once it grips you, once it discovers your vulnerabilities, it clings tightly. It remains indifferent to the symbols of commitment or the time woven together in intimacy. It takes what it desires without a second thought. It lingers eager, poised, insatiable. As the days unfolded, I navigated the mundane with a fervor that drained my very essence. I smiled when expected answered calls and replied to my husband's messages, all while my hands still tingled with the ghost of another's caress. His voice over the phone was warm, intimate, laced with the same gentle care I had cherished for years. He shared secrets of the gatherings, the faces of his companions, and the enticing dinner invitation he found impossible to decline. His words crafted a familiar facade of our existence, secure routine, unbroken. I responded, as I always had, my tone unwavering, my answers instinctive. Yet hidden beneath the facade, an insistent force tugged at the delicate strands of that carefully woven tapestry. As it unraveled, a hushed tension filled the air. The house seemed to echo with an emptiness that lingered, a familiar stillness that had always accompanied his absence. Yet I had transformed. Or perhaps I had finally unveiled a truth I had concealed for far too long. I began to rediscover the essence of who I am. The way I selected my attire each morning, how my fingers caressed the silk of particular blouses, the delicate lace of forgotten undergarments, not for my husband, nor for the man I should have never approached, but for the reflection of myself I believed was lost, the woman who yearned to feel alluring, to feel alive. As I glimpsed my reflection in the hallway mirror, I lingered longer than I ever had before. I allowed my gaze to linger on the delicate contours that time had etched upon my visage, the seductive arc of my lips, the exposed skin of my shoulders. I lingered far too long, fiddling with the neckline of my dress, captivated by how the fabric embraced the contours beneath. The days intertwined, each one a seductive secret waiting to be uncovered, filled with trivial duties, and the weighty, relentless throb of anticipation. Each noise from beyond the window made my heart race, every groan of the floorboards twisting something deep within me. I was uncertain if he would return once more. I hadn't inquired yet when the gentle tap echoed at the rear entrance. An unexpected familiarity washed over me. I unveiled it with eager anticipation. He stood there, rigid and exposed, shedding the guise of nonchalance, revealing the raw truth beneath. His hands rested in his pockets, his gaze unwavering, piercing through the air. "I really shouldn't be here," he murmured once more. I might have echoed the very phrases, reiterated the same cautions. We both understood it was empty, yet I remained oblivious. Instead, I lingered in the shadows. He glided by me, each step deliberate, as if he were gauging my resolve, anticipating a moment when I might reconsider to shut the door and halt this unfolding tension before it spiraled into something beyond our grasp. Yet the door remained ajar. I trailed behind him into the kitchen, where the atmosphere thickened, a palpable tension enveloping us like an intimate embrace. I reclined against the counter, my arms draped casually before me, observing him as he lingered, uncertain of the distance he could dare to breach. Moments linger, caught in a web of uncertainty about my choice. He lingered in silence, his gaze probing my features for an elusive truth I couldn't quite reveal. A hint, a request for consent, a beckoning call. I offered him emptiness, only the subtle arch of my form, reclining my lips slightly ajar, allowing breath to escape in a languid rhythm while my gaze remained fixed on his. It was more than sufficient. He closed the distance that separated us, his hand-rising fingers grazing softly against my cheek before weaving into my hair, holding it just firmly enough to draw my face closer to his. The kiss struck with urgency, his lips colliding with mine, carrying the burden of every moment spent in anticipation. The heat lingered on his lips, a desperate craving evident in the way he pressed into me, trapping me between the unforgiving surface of the counter and the firm contour of his body. I surrendered effortlessly, wholly. My hands glided to his shoulders, fingers entwining with the fabric of his shirt, drawing him nearer, craving something deeper. This time there was only urgency, no gentle caresses or hesitant gestures, just the primal yearning of two souls aware of the forbidden, yet surrendering to the temptation. His lips wandered down my neck, a teasing touch of teeth brushing against the tender skin beneath my ear, eliciting a gasp as my body instinctively arched toward him. His hands traced the curve of my back, slipping under the edge of my blouse, a heated and steady presence against my skin. We slipped from the kitchen to the living room in silence, our bodies entwined, hands exploring with abandon, lips lingering close, barely parting for a fleeting breath. The couch ensnared us once more, my spine sinking into the soft embrace of the cushions, his presence enveloping me, anchoring me in the moment, instant shedding the remnants of my doubt. But then he hesitated, drawing back slightly to gaze down at me, his breath warm and weighty eyes probing. "We won't hold back, will we?" His voice was raw, heavy with the struggle between control and yearning. I remained silent. I lifted my hand, letting my fingertips glide over his jaw, drawing him closer, my lips seeking his once more. The truth lingered in the air, unspoken and heavy, as we transcended the facade of pretense. The night enveloped us, his hands tracing every contour, and I ceased my internal debate of morality, for I understood that this moment was destined to unfold. By the time my husband returned, the house had already mastered the art of concealing my truth. The walls embraced the quiet, concealing the turmoil that unfolded within, as if they were oblivious to the painstaking unraveling of the existence I had meticulously crafted. The kitchen gleamed, the bed was perfectly arranged, and the laundry lay folded, tucked away in drawers like secrets waiting to be uncovered. My hands glided through the motions with an eerie exactness, my body executing the familiar choreography of a woman whose existence appeared intact, yet within me, chaos reigned. Some betrayals linger in silence, devoid of the clamor of slamming doors, the heat of raised voices, or the chaos of objects hurled in fury. Some betrayals unfold with a subtlety that allows them to seep in unnoticed like a whisper in the dark, until the moment arrives when you discover the ground beneath you is crumbling away. I expected to sense it, the heavy burden of disgrace, the suffocating remorse that's meant to trail behind you like a dark spectre. Yet I found that remorse doesn't always announce itself with a clamor. At times, it dons the mask of desire. At times it lingers like the forbidden touch of lips that should have remained untouched. He maintained a careful distance for 2 days following that fateful night. I didn't see him. I didn't hear the knock at the back door, but his presence lingered in the air in the way I found myself gazing out the kitchen window, longer than I should have, anticipating a fleeting silhouette, in the way my skin still tingled, where his hands had once gripped me, fingers mapping out sensations that refused to fade, just as my husband stepped inside, suitcase in hand. His smile was the same gentle arc I had encountered countless times, intimate, warm, reassuring. He brushed his lips against my cheek, a warmth lingering, yet devoid of desire, and inquired about the house, the garden, the subtle intricacies that had perpetually occupied the void between us. I responded, as I always had, my tone steady, my grin courteous. Yet a fragment of my being lingered beyond my own skin, observing the tableau as an outsider, taking in the woman who once held steadfast to her boundaries, now acquiescing as if she hadn't already reduced those boundaries to mere embers. At dinner, I leaned in as he spun tales of the conference, weaving stories of colleagues of deals that danced in success and those that fell into shadows. His words danced in the space between bites of roasted chicken and sips of wine, the same wine he always chose, dry, dependable, and intimately known. Just like him, I wore a smile, when expected chuckled at the perfect intervals, and let my fingers glide over his hand on the table, the movement fluid, rehearsed, and natural. Yet within my mind drifted to firmer grips, to lips that pressed with intention. That night, as we intertwined in the stillness of our shared sanctuary, his caress was tender, lingering just as it had always been. Yet my body remained unresponsive to his call. I reclined beneath him, eyes shut, hands languidly placed at his sides, my thoughts drifting far beyond my skin, yearning for a jolt that never arrived. I mastered the art of deception, crafting the perfect notes, bending my form, just so ensuring the act concluded seamlessly, yet beneath it all, I was hollow, or perhaps haunted by the echoes of another's touch. As the moment faded, his lips brushed against my shoulder, a soft murmur escaping his lips, claiming he had longed for my presence. I clenched my eyes shut, choking back the longing that surged within me. I pondered whether he sensed the void beneath my skin, where passion had once thrived. The following morning, I drifted through the familiar routine once more. Morning rituals, the clatter of plates, the unending tasks I promised myself to conquer. I observed him depart for the office, his briefcase swaying gently at his side, his posture confident, shoulders poised, full of trust. And as the door clicked shut, a heavy silence enveloped me, my breath faltering in a tantalizing pause. Uncertainty lingered in the air, a tantalizing anticipation that danced just out of reach. Perhaps I had been longing for the message, or maybe a hidden part of me had crafted it in secret, long before the words ever graced my screen. "Are you available?" The truth lingered just out of reach, teasing me with its presence before I could even begin to question my own thoughts. Approach. The knock at the back door echoed with an urgency that caught me off guard, as if he had lingered just beyond reach, as if he sensed the gap I had deliberately left ajar. For him, the door within me that I had left ajar when I allowed him entry, silence enveloped us, thick and heavy. Only the relentless tug of souls that had intertwined long before consent was ever sought. His hands sought me effortlessly, as if they were guided by an unspoken familiarity with my form. My body responded to him before my thoughts could take control. Yet this time an undeniable shift lingered in the air. This time as he cradled my face in his hands, his lips met mine with an intensity that lingered devoid of haste, without the frantic disarray of garments, and absent the urgency of grasping fingers. There was a simmering anticipation, there was a hidden desire, and that in some twisted way deepened the shadows. Because it seemed to hold a deeper secret, there was an electric tension in the air, as his fingers brushed against my jaw, lingering just long enough to leave a mark, as if he were etching the moment into his memory. The warmth of his lips brushed against my throat, his body enveloping mine with a languid intensity, as if time itself had paused for our moment. And I loathed it, for desiring him was one matter, but yearning for him was an entirely different affair. But this caress, this intoxicating allure, this felt like the dawn of something neither of us could ever possess. When we were done, when we lay entwined in the gentle echoes of it, his hand lingered softly on my hip, his thumb tracing languid, careless circles on my skin. "We can't continue this charade," I finally murmured, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. He remained silent. He spoke in shadows, weaving tales without commitment or justification. He merely nodded, his eyes shut, forehead gently pressed against my shoulder. Yet we remained still, neither of us daring to rise. And in the silence of that instant, I grasped the unspoken truths. What haunted me most, it wasn't the remorse. The truth was, I found myself unwilling to hold back any longer.